So hello, I'm Elio. And I'm going to talk about VS Code extensions, my passion in life. But let's first talk about HTML. No, I learned a lot of things, and I will probably not sleep well enough today because I learned yet again that there were quirks mode. And this was where it all started for me. You just asked me when I started doing coding. It was around 2004. So I also learned, and I'm old. Thank you very much. So that's the second nightmare. But I first started doing HTML back in the day. And then there was something like quirks mode. And then Internet Explorer 10 came out. Yeah, I'm also a Microsoft guy. Or not really working for Microsoft, but used a lot of Microsoft stuff because I worked in bigger enterprises. And they were using Internet Explorer. And back then, there was a really cool new feature that Microsoft thought was a cool feature. When you didn't set the doc type, then Internet Explorer was going to say, we're just going to use the latest version. And then everything started breaking. So, very fun fact. So, anyone that has ever set anything else than the new doc type that was shown? Okay, you're all old, same as me. Yeah, I hide them. So that said, hello, I'm Elio. I'm from Belgium, working for Rapid, lead DevTools engineer. I'm also a stickerpreneur, which means I love stickers. I got my own sticker shop, and I didn't invent that. It was my friend, which is also a stickerpreneur, so she gave us this title. I'm also the maintainer and developer of FrontMatter CMS. It's a CMS that actually runs within Visual Studio Code. So if you have a static website that you're creating with Next or with Astro, yes, that's for you, Alex. So Astro, FrontMatter, try it out. That said, developing since 2004, but back then, when I was starting developing, it was in text or in TextPad and in, I think, Notepad++. So anyone that used Notepad++? Okay, cool. Yeah. No? What did you use in the time?
Notepad.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. That's also where it started, but at least you got some intelligence when it was Notepad++. And then went over to Sublime Text. I still have my license, but then Microsoft announced Visual Studio Code. And that's where it all happened for me. That's where I fell in love with extension development, because it's quite an easy system to enhance your developer experience, enhance your browser or your editor. So I started building extensions in 2017. The first extension that I created was just an extension of bundling a couple of useful functionalities together for doing, and I'm going to swear, sorry, SharePoint development. Nobody is going to run away? Okay. SharePoint is also a very good tool that would have never been validated by HTML or with HTML because it was totally broken. And yes, I also did table styling. Anyone that did table styling before? See, I feel at home. I feel the pain. We are all going to have nightmares tonight. Great. So for all the young people or that never touched tables, be happy about yourself. And luckily, there's new things as well these days that you don't have to do that. But that said, yeah, so I started with doing, creating like an essential package, and then I started to start developing tools on it. Most of the time I start doing these things because I feel a need or I see something that is missing inside my editor and I want to automate my life. We're all developers and that's what we like to do. Repetition is hard. We don't like that. It's getting boring. So what do? You find a solution for that. So you start your 100x side project and then you're working for a weekend on that side project again. So VS Code is somewhat similar, and extending that is what became my passion. And it's easy because there's a marketplace. You can share it with others, so people that want to use it can just use it. I also work for a company that is called Rapid, and we have our Rapid API client, and soon there will be more, which is an API client that runs within Visual Studio Code, where you can test APIs. So that's what I'm also partly doing as a daytime job. So why your own extensions? I already mentioned it. Why I create my own extensions is because sometimes you have a need in order to do something. In my previous company, we had like a snippet library that we wanted to share across our team members. So we never published that to the marketplace, but we had an internal extension where we could just have our snippets, but also some more useful functionality, like it asked questions on which kind of database do you want to include, which kind of, yeah, I know I'm going to swear again, the SharePoint tenant that you want to include, and so on and so on. So all of that thing was in an extension. So, and it was easier for others to just consume it and to start working with a new project. So for you, it can be the same thing, helping your peers, helping your colleagues, but also if you find that need for yourself, why not share it with the rest of the world? So what can you actually do with extensions? There are quite a lot of things. And first of all, it starts with commands. So commands is the most simple way, and that's also what I'm going to show you. It's actually doing and requesting something on VS Code and saying, hey, VS Code, I want you to do this, and VS Code will do something. That something is what you're going to implement. You can also store data. For instance, data that you want to have that needs to stay within your extension. So that you can see it as like state management or caching, so that it's not always have to do the backend processing and so on. You can display notifications. People like notifications, so yes, you can also show notifications in your VS Code extension. There's even like a Slack bot, or no, a Slack extension that shows Slack's notifications inside VS Code. Why? I don't know. I don't want to be notified in VS Code again if I have Slack open, but yeah, if you want, you can do that. You can also collect user input, open files, process files, theming, probably one of the most used things to extend, and then language features. If you are going to create your own coding language, you can create your own language features on top of that. Think about it like React, Angular, Vue, all of these things, they have their own language features because they write HTML in a different way. So all of that comes then into play. So how do you get started? And it's actually very simple, and probably also the only tool that still uses Yeoman. Anyone that still uses Yeoman? Anyone that has ever used Yeoman? A couple of people. Okay, it's actually, Yeoman is just a tool to scaffolding projects. And you create or you install templates. And these templates are called generators. So Microsoft once took Yeoman as de facto tool or standard for using or creating new projects for Visual Studio Code. They also use it for other projects, so it's not only for Visual Studio Code. But what you can see there is you have generator code. That's what Yeoman is going to look for. So it knows everything with generator in front of it, prefixed. It's a template. And what Yeoman can do is it can read this template and it will ask you questions. And that's what the developer is going to define. So it can ask you, okay, what is your project? What type of project do you want to create? Where do you want to create it? And all of these things, because it's code-driven. Another tool, and that's a tool that I'm not going to talk about, is the VS Code / VSCE. That's the Visual Studio Code Extension Manager. You can look at it as NPM, the package manager, where you actually are going to use this tool in order to publish your extension to the marketplace. So publishing is not what I'm going to talk about, because that's the next step or the final step. So I'm more talking about creating your new extension, testing your new extension, and so on. So where does it start? It all starts with these two things. So you need to have the Yeoman generator installed, and you need to have the generator code installed. So I'm doing npm-g, meaning I'm going to install it globally. So creating that first project. npm is installed. I'm not going to show you this. I probably think that you already did that 20,000 times in your life. and it takes a while. So we are going to straight into creating the project. So when everything is installed, the only thing that you need to do is say yo code. And that's how the Yeoman generator works. So yo is the command, and then saying, yeah, indeed, yo man, homie. That's how it works. And the next thing is what you need to specify is a template that you want to use. If you forgot the template, no worries, you can just say yo, and it will tell you, hey, I got these templates for you. Which one do you want to pick? Now, in my case, there will be only code. And then it will ask you a couple of questions on what do you want to create. And that's actually the same thing what I already mentioned. So you can first create an extension. That's the most general one. That's also the one that I always take. But you can also choose for creating a new color theme, creating a language support. If you create that new coding language, like language support, you can create syntax highlighting, bracket matching, and so on and so on. You can create code snippets. That's also what I did in my previous job. You can do key maps, so keyboard bindings, all of these things. So once that is done, you get something. And that something is done by Yeoman. So it's going to take that template, you fill in all these questions, and then it spits out a couple of folders, a couple of files. And these couple of files, they are looking like this. So you have your extension folder, and then in your extension folder, you have a .vs code. I forgot to ask a question. Is there anyone that actually doesn't use VS Code besides you, Alex? I don't look at you. You don't dare anymore. So you recently started doing VS Code development. So I converted yet another one. So anyone that doesn't use VS Code? I'm not looking at you, I'm not looking at you. So everyone, that's amazing. Great. We have a full audience that is doing VS Code development. Yeah. No, just joking. You're allowed to be here. When you walk out, you're going to install VS Code and you're starting to develop extensions. If not, I will. No, I'm not going there. But VS Code, .vs Code means it's a folder where there is like your debugger configuration, the tasks that are going to run. For instance, how is a package going to run? So when I press F5, what's going to happen? So it's going to create or open a new extension host where I can actually test my extension. Then you have source folder. In the source folder, there's one important file besides your test file. It's the extension.ts file. The extension.ts file is your main extension file that is going to have an activation and a deactivate method. And then your package.json file. In every JavaScript project, you have a package.json file, so you have it over here as well. They call it your extension manifest. And in your extension manifest, there is all the things that you can think about having in your package.json, but there are a couple of important things. And that's like the name. There's the name of your extension that it will be using. Same thing as a name for an NPM package. You have a version, same thing as a version for your package of NPM. But this is your version of your extension. But you have a publisher, and publisher is your ID that you're going to have on the marketplace. So in the beginning, there won't be a publisher name, so it will be undefined. So if you want to publish to the marketplace, you first need to get a publisher ID, and you need to specify it in your package.json file. Because that publisher ID is only yours, so you can only create it once. And the moment it's in there, it's a validation. It will check based on your access token and check based on that name if you're allowed to publish something in that publisher name. Engines will tell where it can run and what it can run. So it will be VS Code and the version of VS Code. Activation event, it's a special one whenever you are going to define how your extension is going to start up. So your extension can start up based on a command that you're going to run, or can start up from the moment you open VS Code in order to do some background processing. Like for instance, whenever you're going to use a language support extension, you only want to have the extension spin up when a certain file is present in your environment. So let's say I have an extension for Vue and I open a React project, then maybe my project doesn't need, or my extension doesn't need to run. So then I can just check if there is a view extension or a view file type. If it's there, then it's going to start up. If it's not there, I can just leave it there. And contributes is where you extend the extension. That's where you're going to tell what is the extension about. So what is in the extension? Is it a language feature? Is which commands are available, and so on. So with these kind of properties, that are the one that we are going to do. Activation events, sometimes you see people using star, which is a wildcard. It's always okay when you're using it during development. But wildcard is only intended to be used during development. Reason why is the moment you start it with a wildcard, it's automatically going to start as well during the startup of VS Code. So your extension is automatically going to start during the startup of VS Code. So it's going to slow down the installation or the startup of VS Code. It's never intended to be published. You can publish it, but it's never good. A better one is the on-startup enabled. So if your extension will always need to be running, do it on startup finished. Because once you use on startup finished, it's going to be done after VS Code is started up or has started up. Why would you use star? Star is okay whenever you think, okay, I'm going to do some proof of concept thing or some testing and I'm not yet sure what my extension will do, and at the end you convert everything or you change everything to the appropriate ones. You can now also see like on language, that's what I specified. If there's a particular language, then you can activate it. Workspace contains, it's like a glob pattern. You can just check if this file is there, then you can activate, if not, and so on. Since 1.74, there is the on-command and on-view that aren't required anymore. It was a bit weird that every command that you defined also needed to be defined in the on-activation events. Was a bit redundant because a command needs to be defined in the package.json file and also in code, and then also in the activation event. So that was in 3 different levels. So they removed this and they said, okay, if you're going to use a command, it's always going to be activated whenever you call that command. Contribute, it's where everything is going to be, like the functionalities that you're going to add. I'm going to go over that later during the demo. So think about it as the commands registering, the view registering, and so on. So where does the coding actually start? The coding starts in your extension.ts file. In the extension.ts file, you have 2 methods. You have the activate one and you have the deactivate one. The deactivate one is most of the time optional. I've never really used it. Why? It's only when you deactivate the extension. Meaning, if you uninstall the extension, it's not doing anything. For that, they have an uninstall script. So if you want to do something, whenever the extension gets uninstalled, like removing a state and so on, or remove a couple of files that your extension already set, it's with an extra script that you need to define. So this on deactivate or deactivate method is something that is not very much used because only during the deactivation of your extension in your workspace is going to be used. So let me show some code. So here is already code, but let's do first this. If I do yo, or if I forgot it, I can just do yo, and then I get a really nice guide whenever I select my generator. So in this case, I'm going to select code, because that's the only generator I have. And then you can see, for the people that already are familiar with Yeoman, you have this guy, which is always there, and it says which generator that or template you selected. Here are all the options that you get. I'm just going to choose for a new extension, and then it's going to ask me questions like, what's the name of your extension, demo, GDG, what's the identifier, this is the same, and I'm not going to say a description. Yes, you are okay with a Git repository. Do you want to bundle it with Webpack, yes or no? For now, that doesn't matter. And then which package manager do you want to use? NPM, it's fine. And then the moment I press enter, it's going to install all of these things. I'm just going to skip this, and let's see if the package got created. Yes. And there we go. So what do we have here? So over here we have the package.json file with a name, display name, and so on, all of these things that are required. But what I mentioned here is engines. Engines is the requirements for letting VS Code know where or what version your extension is going to run in. So if you say version 1.77, this extension can only run from that version onwards. So if you have a lower version, this extension will not run. Funny enough, they still have the on command here, which is going away. And it's also there, so with these squiggly lines, it's saying, hey, this is not needed anymore. So they have to update their Yeoman generator. So what you can do nowadays is just leave it out. So activation event is empty. And then you have contribute commands. And here I have my default command, which is just an hello world. Scripts, dev dependencies, and dependencies can be done. So all of these things are there. Nothing very different on a normal NPM package. So commands is the most simple way to extend and create an extension. So what are commands? Commands allow you to do something, and that something is what you define. So for instance, the hello world that I'm going to show later will just say in the notification message, hey, hello world. So the default starting of an application or a development project. So command autonomy is where a command starts, and a command is defined with a couple of things. First of all, it's a command name. The name that you're going to create as the unique identifier of your command. Why? It's first for you, because you want to run that command, but also for other extensions that you might generate for intercommunication between commands or between extensions. So you can use a command for that as well. A title, the title that will show up in Visual Studio Code whenever you're going to run the command. So if you don't give a title or meaningful title, you will not see it. A category is where it needs to be categorized. So we'll show that as well. And then enablement is a specification that you can say, I want to enable this command or I want to disable this command. Meaning it can check settings within your environment in order to know when the command is available or not. For instance, if you create a command that is only available to be running inside a React file, you can set the enablement to false whenever it's not a React file, and then it's not executable. There's also the when clause. If you go deeper inside VS Code development, it's very similar, but with when you can show or hide a command. With enablement, you can enable or disable it. So that's the thing where you need to look for. So a default one is command and then title. That's what you get out of the box. That's also what we are going to extend. You will see that it's part of contribute. So contribute, that's where you tell Visual Studio Code, hey, I want to extend it, or my extension is going to extend your experience, and this is what I want to extend. So I want to extend it with a command, and I want to extend it with a command and with this title. So that's part one. So in your package.json file, you register your command. The next step is in your extension.ts file. That's where you write the code. So what do you need to do? First thing that you need to do is you need to register the command with the same ID. And then the code that you're going to write. So in this case, it's just going to show you an information message saying, hey, hello, testing. And this is what you then can expect. So whenever I develop this, I run it, I can then say, hey, open me the command palette, run the command, and then it's going to show me a message, hey, hello from testing. So you can do more with these commands. As I already mentioned, you can call into other commands from other extensions from the built-in commands. For instance, if you want to open a file, you can just say Visual Studio open this file, and you place the file path to the file that needs to be opened, or open a browser, you can also do that. So all the built-in commands, they're also available to all extensions to be called. So let's go back to our code. So I'm going to close this one because no npm dependencies are installed. And what I have over here is somewhat the same thing. So I have here the hello world commands. I have here a title, which is actually a localization file that is being used, but it's just going to say hello world. And I can also say a category like code review, for instance. If I then go to my terminal and do npm run watch, I like to do this. Some people just like to run F5. I like to be able to know that I'm running my watcher so that I can just refresh on the fly. And then I press F5, and it's going to open a second window. And in this second window, you see at the top, extension development host. That's where you know, okay, this is where your extension is going to be testable. This is an error message of GitHub, so don't worry about that. If we are going back over to our editor over here, so in the package.json file, we have our commands. And in the extension.ts file, what do we have here? We have our register command with the hello world, and in this case, it's going to show me an information message with VS Code session. I can also say at GDG Berlin. Cool thing, the moment you're in a development environment of Visual Studio Code, you can do Command R or Control R to just refresh these instances. So, like a browser. What can I do right now? If I open the command palette, you can see at the top, code review, hello world. If I press this, I get over here a message saying, hello world from GDG Berlin. So this is what my extension is doing. I can just put breakpoints there if I want. So if I just go back and say hello world, it will break over there. Cool, but what can I do more? Bless you. So what I can do more is I can add other commands. For instance, the ones that I prepared. If my copy paster is working, no? Hey, funny. Okay, doesn't want to copy paste. Let's see. Okay, let's do it a different way. Let's see if, okay, this one is working. So then let's write it ourselves. So I'm going to go for a command. And this command is VS Code /session dot. And in this case, the first thing that we are going to do is the code quality one. And the code quality is this ID that I already prepared. So it's going to be like this. Title, it's check the code quality, and category is code review. Okay, so now I configured my command. The next thing that I need to do is I need to register my command. What I did is I created a new class where I can just do the same registration, and it's going to do the registration of the command over here. And then whenever I'm going to execute the command, I'm going to review the code, let's say. So in this case, it's just going to create me a random emoji, and it's going to say what it thinks about my code. So it's going to give me a message saying you've earned an emoji, and that emoji can be one of the following. So hopefully I'm not going to get poop. Yeah. GraphQL was, ChatGPT was very inventive with the emojis that it gave me, so sorry about that. Sorry, I need to go to sleep, bedtime. I'm an old man, so. Check the code quality is now a new command that is available. So if I'm going to click on it, oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's what it thinks about my code. So it's just showing up. So, but okay, notifications, it's not that interesting. Most of the time, what you can, for instance, do is insert things in your editor. Inside a file, you can do things like inside comments, or insert comments, and so on. So that's what I prepared as well. So in my code review or code comments, I can insert on the fly some new information inside my file. So what is there? VS Code session code comments. If I do this command, title, and create a comment, category, code review. Going back to the extension, it's the register method, and inside the register, I got my register command. So in this one, it's going to do a little bit more. The first thing that it will do is it will give my active text editor. That's the active file that is active. And then you can also retrieve the active position of your cursor. Where in the file are you? I'm going to check if there's an editor and if there is a selection. If there is no selection or no editor, skip it, because then you're not in a file. And then I'm going to put some @random comment in there. So I can then say, hey, editor, do an edit, and in here, you're going to insert something. And where are you going to insert? You're going to insert it at this position. You can do a delete, you can do an update, whatever you want. So in this case, I'm just going to insert. So I'm going to refresh, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to position myself over here, and maybe set a breakpoint just to walk you through it. And let's see. Okay, and then create command. And there we go. So right now we're hitting this, and we are getting an editor back. We are getting a selection back. So we know that we are on line 32, and we have character 0, so meaning we're in the beginning of the line. And then it's going to add our command, or comment. Why do I keep saying command? And this is what the thing is going to add. Looks like somebody copy-pasted their way to success on this one. Cool. I don't know. Let's create another one. That's not very at random. Oh, I'm sure there's a method to your madness. So you get the point, I hope. So you can actually extend by a command, process your file, get the text out of it, update it, and so on. So you can do more than only this particular thing. Now the next thing is interfaces. And I'm not going to deep dive in it, because that's where it becomes actually really interesting, but that's already another topic. You can actually extend Visual Studio Code with your own UI. And where does it come in place? So Visual Studio Code has a couple of these elements, and all of these elements can be managed by you, can be done, or can be added, or you can add elements to it. For instance, you have the activity bar at the left side. That's where you can add new icons. So if you want to have a new experience where you have like a new panel that you want to add, you can have your own icon over here, and then when you click on it, it will open your experience. Most of the time, we are familiar with the primary sidebar. That's where you have your file tree. That's where you can also add new things. So if you add a new activity bar item, it will automatically open a new empty primary sidebar. You have the editor itself. The editor itself is where you can add functionality, or you can add actions. And where can you add these actions? These actions can be added over here. So at the top here, you can add a couple of actions like buttons where you click on it and something will be done. You have the secondary sidebar, which is basically the same thing as a primary sidebar, but on the other side. At the panel at the bottom, where you have your terminal, that's where you can extend it. And then at the bottom, the sidebar, which is most of the time used for showing a progress that something is being done in the background. So I already explained all these things. But what is useful is the primary sidebar. There are a couple of things, or a couple of view containers, as they call it, that are damn, I cannot talk anymore today. That are automatically available to you. For instance, the Explorer, the source control management, the debug, and testing. These are the ones from Visual Studio, and you can extend them. So if you say, I want to add something to the tree view, you can do that, and then you use Explorer. If you want to create your custom one, then you need to create a custom experience there as well. So you can create your own activity bar item, and you can then define your own thing. So how do you do that? You can extend that, again, within the contributes. So inside contributes, you can then say, hey, I want to create a new sidebar, I want to create a new view, and then you have two types of views. You have a tree view, which is a default one, and you have a web view. And web view is where you can have the HTML rendering that we had from before. So everything what was said before can be put in a web view. And this is where you can actually see this happening. So you have your activity bar. Inside the activity bar, you have your title and an icon. So what I can do, because I cannot copy paste, is like this. I'm going to put this over here, contributes, activity bar, like this. And what is most important, if you have an activity bar item, you need to specify an icon. If you don't specify an icon, it will not show up. Next thing, come on. Next thing, what you need to define is a view. Because the view is the view that you're going to define for the activity bar icon or item. So I have an activity bar icon. Item, Elio, thank you. I had a very long day of meetings, I think. And that's actually true. So there's an ID for the activity bar, which is custom activity bar. And then I'm going to define a view, and that view ID is custom activity bar. And then inside that view, you can have different views. Now, I'm going to only define one, but you can have multiple ones. So if you have multiple ones defined, you get a collapsible section there, like what you can see over here. These are views that are defined. So in this panel, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 views defined inside the extension, if it would be an extension. So once we have this, and we would refresh this experience, it will not do anything because probably my icon is wrong. Let's see, assets, icon. Oh, now it's working, yeah. Let's see why it wasn't working before. There we go. So let's do this. So I got a squirrel. For the people that are working together with me, they know that I love squirrels, but also it was the icon that I could find there. So what we have now is this particular thing. So we created an activity bar icon, which is now a squirrel. And if we click on it, it will open a new view. It's a new custom view, and we didn't define anything yet. We defined a zone, and that zone, that's what we're going to fill in. And you can fill it in with whatever you want. With a tree view, with a custom web view, but that's for next time. You can also use a welcome message. And every view that you create can have its own welcome message. The moment you specify a new tree view or a new web view, it will be overwritten. But if you don't define anything in code, you can, from within your package.json file, you can fill it in with some markdown. And you can even have buttons there, like for instance this sign in button. If you for instance say, okay, first of all, whenever you're going to load the extension or start using the extension, you need to sign in. So you click on sign in, you sign in, and all of a sudden then the interface is going to appear. Same thing can be done here. So this is, for instance, the welcome message where you can see that sign in button. So the moment I click on sign in, then inside my code, it's checking if you're signed in and is going to render the output. And then the welcome message is going away. Same thing can be done for this kind of an extension. So what I'm going to do here, if it's going to work again, no, funny enough. So let's say, no. Okay, so view, welcome, and it's going to be view, double point slash, and it's going to be my custom view that I need, content, and then I can say hello at GDG Berlin. I do some line breaks. I can say something. And what I can then do is use this. This is like normally what we would write in, in HTML. For a link would be HTTP. In this case, we are going to use command. Why command? Because this is something that Visual Studio Code understands, that you want to run a command. What kind of command do you want to run? That's up to you, but I'm going to choose or pick the code quality one because that's showing an information message. So if I'm going to do this, I just need to place the ID of my command. And if everything is going all right, yay, it's going to show me this. So now I have my welcome experience. And if I click on say something, and I'm going to remove this thing, it will say, hey, this is your emoji that I have earned. So I can click multiple times on it, and you will see that it will keep on generating. Oh yeah, I got a poop. So thank you, Visual Studio Code. So that was it on the demo side. There's more on Visual Studio Code development. So this is just, yeah, the surface. There's a lot more to discover on web views. You can have your own custom experiences in it. Like for instance, if you would go and open our own extension, you will see that this experience that is created is a complete website basically inside Visual Studio Code that you can run. So it's web views, so you can have your own custom UI and your own custom React, Vue, Astro, whatever application running within it. So if you want to do that, yes, that's possible. So that said, I'm not going to keep you longer. So I was Elio, working for Rapid. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If none, then I wish you a very, very nice evening, and hopefully we see each other again.